I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:04. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Columbia Heights Public Schools Board meeting for Tuesday, February 10th, 2015. And if you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Lori, would you call the roll, please?
Nichols.
Here.
Palmer.
Here.
Larkin.
Here.
Landwehr.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Meyer here.
Thank you. I'd like to read our mission statement. Columbia Heights Public Schools creates worlds of opportunity for every learner in partnership with supportive small-town communities by challenging all to discover their talents, unleash their potential, and develop tools for lifelong success. The district's core values are community, excellence, collaboration, integrity, respect, courage, and innovation. And based on our meeting we just had previously, I'd like to take this just a second to remind us as board members that our role is governance and policy, and that the decisions that we make, we should always try to make sure they're in the best interest of the kids. Tonight, we have a Heights Light. The board is going to honor Casey Mahon, Director of Communications, for receiving the Minnesota Schools Public Relations Association, also known as MINSPRA, 2014 Award for District Branding. And if I could, I'm just going to read this here. The Minnesota Schools Public Relations Association has awarded Columbia Heights Public Schools with a 2014 Star Award for new district branding. The district was selected for its new branding of creating college and career-ready graduates. The branding is aligned with the district's strategic roadmap, specifically on strategic direction E of Tell Our Story, brand development, reputation management to increase partnership and enrollment. The Star Awards formally recognize school public relations professionals for their excellence in strategic communications, publications, electronic media, and service. Columbia Heights Public Schools was the only district in the state to receive a branding award. MINSPRA is a nationally recognized organization of public relations professionals, superintendents, and school district personnel dedicated to strategic communications and education. So if I could get Casey to, who's going to take the picture, Casey? Oh, all right, we got it covered. Okay. Just checking.
Here we go.
You guys are always way ahead of me. Congratulations, Casey. I just want to mention, Casey, as far as recognition, at least from my personal perspective, as far as you in the district, I feel like there's a lot of times, I go a lot of places in the district, and I don't know of many of those times where you're not there with your camera doing something, working on things. So, and I know that a lot of the recognition that we're getting in the newspapers and the different areas, I know that there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes that you're doing for that. And so definitely a well-deserved award. Oh, we should probably get a picture of him holding his award. Or we make sure you do that before the night's over? Okay, thank you. All right, I didn't think to bring that up, sorry. So thank you, Casey, you do a great job. Okay, now we'll go ahead and move forward. Next will be the agenda approval adjustments and announcements and correspondence. Okay, is there any correspondence? Actually, you know what, never mind, that's down there. Sorry, never mind. Okay, approval of the agenda. If I could get a motion to move that forward.
So moved.
Motion by Laura,
Second.
second by Lori. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, announcements. February 16th, Monday, there's no school President's Day. the district is closed. February 17th, Tuesday, 5:30, school board listening session here in out in the Family Center foyer. February 17th, 6 o'clock, school board work session here in the community room. February 24th, 7 p.m., regular school board meeting. March 10th, Tuesday, 5 p.m., subcommittee on policy meeting in the superintendent's conference room. March 10th at 7 p.m., regular school board meeting in the community room. Now correspondence. Is there any correspondence?
Mr. Chair, members, there's none at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is communication to the board, citizens and employee representatives. At this time, any citizen or employee may briefly address the school board. The board will listen to brief remarks, ask clarifying questions, and if desired, request that administration follow up. The board will not take action at this meeting on requests presented at this time. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Could I have a motion to move that forward, please?
So moved.
Motion by Laura,
Second.
second by Lori. Thank you. Okay, any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion reports, information items. Now we'll go to reports for members of the board. Board members will report out on board activities since the last regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education. Molly, would you like to start tonight?
Sure. I attended the MSBA training for the treasurer position last week, and then yesterday had a nice meeting with Superintendent Kelly.
Oh, okay. Lori? Sorry. I'm gonna wait to be called on.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, I too attended the MSBA Officers Workshop Training last week to learn about my new duties as clerk. And then I attended the AMSD Directors Meeting last Friday, which was quite interesting. There was some interesting dialogue with, let's see, Senator Bonoff and Representative Erickson regarding some bills that are kind of coming up before committee right now regarding alternative teacher licensure and unrequested leaves of absence. So there's, I think the summaries, information of those bills were in our packets or our updates last week. So if you have questions, I can try to answer them, or you can contact the senator or representative directly. I believe there was a hearing earlier this morning. So it'll just be kind of interesting to see and watch these as they progress through the process. And then the governance training earlier before our meeting. And that's it.
Thank you. Ted?
Yeah, I think just before I go into my report, the Polar Plunge benefits SECA, right, the food shop?
Correct.
Okay, so it's a great cause for that. I was at the governance training before this meeting, and I was also at the chair meeting prior to that. And then I attended the mostly Chamber of Commerce meetings in the last 2 weeks, focusing on the intersection between workforce development and education, and how to develop the workforce that we need so desperately. There are a lot of shortages, and they're projected shortages as the baby boomers move through. So trying to get the conversation together with the education community and the business community. I also attended actually a business council meeting with Director Holmgren, presented about the school district, and did a great job, and filled in the local businesses on what we're doing as a district, and especially the highlights, the achievements that this district is accomplishing. I also attended the WEMAP executive committee meeting. We're going to talk about this later, I believe, in the agenda, but tomorrow night is a very big crucial moment for WEMAP, where we talk about what to do with the Joint Powers Board is going to do with the schools, whether to convey them to Robbinsdale or Minneapolis, or have another school district manage, most likely Robbinsdale, the schools, as an effort to reduce costs, or just leave things the way they are. So I'm sure there'll be a robust discussion tomorrow night, and it's a momentous occasion. It will be. So Anybody that wants to attend from the community, I would certainly encourage them to come. It's gonna be at the Fair School in Robbinsdale, at 5:30. And then, I also attended some Lions meetings and talked to constituents.
Okay, thank you. Grant?
I listened to some parents' concerns and pointed them in the right direction this following week and making sure they followed the right command, chain of command. Went to the city council meeting last night. It was a good, it was an interesting meeting, talking about the library, how it's going to get built and all the bonds they're passing, so it was kind of exciting. Also today I met with Kristen Stunkel, Jody Gadiant, Karen Kramer for ECFE and ECSE and asked them how I could help as their liaison, and had a really great meeting with them. You know, they showed me around, and we talked about how to get parents engaged for preschool and early childhood, and so it was very informing, and I think we're, you know, anything I could do to help them, and they were very nice. I mean, the things that they do at ECFE and ECSE are just amazing. I think, especially as a parent that's gone through both, you know, both my kids went through each one, and that's just an amazing group they have there. And I think that's something that, you know, we should promote more, maybe a little bit. And that's about it. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Laura?
I attended a 916 meeting last week, and on the agenda tonight, we're going to have the superintendent, Connie Hayes, who's going to be presenting. So I will pass on my update from that meeting, because I think a lot of those things are going to be touched upon. I also attended a business council meeting this past Friday, and we did have a wonderful presentation from Director Holmgren. And that was nice. It was nice to see the questions going back and forth. And the business community really does take an interest in the district, and would you know, really wants to know, you know, oh no, what can we do, and you know, these are our needs and things like that. So it was really nice to see. I also had a wonderful meeting today with Kathy Kelly and Dan Robleski about a potential project. Which, until I guess we get the go-ahead on that, it's one of those things that's just kind of pie in the sky right now. But I had a great tour of the high school and looked at some of the new branding that's being done over there. If you haven't had a chance to get into the school to see some of the new signs for like the main office and stuff, it really dresses it up. It's very little, but it looks so much more finished that way. And took a look at a lot of the display presentations, and I was disappointed to see that the new art gallery, that the second semester stuff wasn't up yet, so I went through the art gallery when there was no art in it, so that was kind of disappointing, but I'll have to catch it next time. Of course, I attended also the Teamworks shop earlier today. That's it.
Thanks. I attended the chair meeting prior to this tonight, and then also attended the Teamworks meeting on governance, where I consider it just one more step as a board as we work forward to work together well as a group. It was not a super long session, and he always does a really nice job, but even the time that we had, I take it as a positive, as the direction that hopefully we go as a board. So. And that's it for me. And superintendent's report.
Mr. Chair, members, as Memberland, we're alluded to it, WEMAP is really in the throes of some big decision-making, and in the last couple weeks, the superintendents have been meeting, and so have the HR directors. The WEMAP Superintendent Advisory met, and they're really focusing on issues of possible conveyance for the two schools, to Minneapolis and to Robbinsdale. And it seems that most of the school districts, if not all, by the time the board meets in February, will have resolutions of support, much like this board did, for conveyance of the schools. And those, I believe, will be presented, if they have not been already, as background to the WEMAP Joint Powers Board. I'm also on the WEMAP Safe Landing Subcommittee, just in case the schools are conveyed. We have to follow state laws and HR procedures in place, because there will be staff that could either stay with Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, or perhaps come to one of the school districts that are part of the consortium. We also talk about what we're going to do to support the students. I've had an opportunity to work closely with Anne Marie Arndt, who's the communication specialist for the WEMAP schools, and it's been a pleasure meeting her. She's been working with the HR directors and some frequently asked questions for the staff. Lindsay Bennett, our director of HR, met last Friday with all the superintendents and some attorneys on conveyance issues as they relate to procedures for staff, so that if the schools are conveyed, we are ahead of the game, and we'll be sure that we're being fair to everybody, both the fair school teachers and the home districts and unions and contracts. Excuse me. In addition to that, you know, we have been looking at seeking other collaborative partners as well. And that's been a direction both at the table, the WEMAP table with superintendents, and also from Minnesota Department of Education, saying that we need to, in order to live up to our integration plan, work with other districts as well. So we had a really great meeting, I think, with St. Anthony New Brighton. And Director Holmgren was there with me, as well as Director Burkus. And we talked about what we might do is just putting our feet in the water a little bit and having some joint programming this summer around the writing process. And so we're going to put together a proposal together and then see what our staffs think about that. We tend to do a lot of programming in the summer. And so we thought, wouldn't it be nice to get our students together, do something around writing and probably equity and diversity. And so if that is going to happen, we will bring that back to you as an information item, but we're very excited about it. So we're hoping that that will all work out. As Member Meyer already alluded to, we had a meeting last Friday morning at AMSD, and she's done such a nice job summarizing it that I'm not going to go into it. But she is correct. We did put everything in the superintendent's update. So if you have questions, we'd be happy to answer them, or you can follow the legislative hearings. The Achieve program, as you know, has been going through its own form of academic return on investment. We've looked at it every year for 4 years, and we had our last quarterly meeting, and we've discussed some recommendations, and Director Hollaby is here tonight, and she'll be talking to you a little later in the program about what admin is looking at as from a management perspective to do with that program. I'm so glad that Superintendent Hayes is here tonight, because my next item is academic return on investment. And in addition to supporting all of our gifted and special education students, she's also helping us through the academic return on investment process. And so thank you for that, Superintendent Hayes. We've been doing a lot on that. And this month, we had the opportunity to meet with our shared psychometrician, and it feels kind of nice to say we have a shared psychometrician who is going to be helping us with data analysis. She came out to our district academic return on investment meeting and introduced herself and helped us work through some problems. So it was very nice getting her her opinions on our AVID situation. And then we also had a combined call, which was very useful to us, with all of the districts that were involved with the District Management Council, talking about our data analysis together. So Director Hennekens was a part of that call, and so those two things really wouldn't be possible without 916 coordinating it, so thank you again. Another thing that is going on, and if you've been on the board in a previous year, you'll know that customer service, when we were working it through at a school board work study, as a superintendent, I came in consultation, said, what do you think about customer service? And the board was very helpful in talking about where they thought we needed to grow. So want you to know that we've launched out on a plan for customer service. We started with the administrators. The admin team had a 5-hour work study session in customer service this month. And it was sponsored by the University of Minnesota and coordinated by Directors Bennett and Hollaby. And we are setting goals in that area. It's going to be about an 18-month process. We're going to work our way through the faculty and the staff in the organization, and we'll be keeping you posted, but we hope to see some real changes in how we treat our guests and how we view our customers. And so we'll keep you posted on that. It is a priority that really was established about a year ago, but something called the levy got in the way, and so now, so now we're back on track, and so we'll be working on customer service. I wanted to let you know that we are in fact still working on the permanent replacement for Columbia Academy. The position is posted. Director Bennett and I met with the Columbia Academy leadership team to start putting together the characteristics for the rubric. I know that the board received a monkey survey that we'd encourage you to fill out. We're sending that things out to parents and to faculty and staff. And, excuse me, we hope to have a robust pool, and we'll keep you posted in the update on how that is all going. And I think last but certainly not least is the staffing process is underway. You directed us in January to look for effectuate economies and efficiencies. And we've begun that process. We meet at least weekly, K-5, 6-12, and then K-12, and then sometimes pre-K. And it's really going to be a stretch for us if the governor's proposal of 1% and 1% on the formula really comes to fruition, because we have a 4% roll-up cost for our budget. And so although there are many things included, we may have to be ever vigilant on putting some money on the formula. Not saying give us more money, but perhaps shifting some of the money that's already allocated to the formula. We'll have to see how that plays out. When Member Meyer and I were down at AMSD, the Senate and the House reminded us that the governor can propose a budget, but that the Senate and the House dispose. And so we'll have to see what they do with the budget, but the one is going to be a stretch for us. I want you to know, though, that Director Holmgren and I immediately fed that into our budget projections for you. So we're figuring it on a 1 and a 1 for now. And as was already mentioned, I've met in chair meetings with Member Larkin and Vice Chair Landwehr and with other board members, and I want to thank each and every one of you for either your text messages, emails, or conversations with me this last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Gonna just based on Member Landwehr's report or the conversation about WEMAP and Superintendent Kelly's is. It's obviously, it's a huge deal that's coming down the pike as far as the decisions that have to be made. And for the general public, just so they understand, we've had numerous presentations. Superintendent Lester came out and talked. A lot of information was presented to us at our last board meeting. I just want the general public to understand that as a board, unanimously, we voted to support a resolution supporting the conveyance of the schools. And Member Landwehr, as our liaison for WEMAP, will be taking that voice forward to us as he moves forward to make sure that they know where we stand. But it is an emotional, and it's a big deal. It's a lot of different things. So it was not necessarily an easy decision to make as a group, but it was one that I think as a board we made, again, in what's in the best interest of our kids moving forward. So just know that there was a lot of thought went into that. So. And moving forward on our agenda, Northeast Metro 916 presentation. The board will be presented with information on Northeast Metro 916 services. The presenter will be Superintendent Connie Hayes, and Nicole Hallaby, Director of Student Services, will be available for any questions that may come up. Welcome, Connie. Thanks for coming.
Nicole's going to join me. Great. There we go. Well, thank you. Chairman Larkin, Superintendent Kelly, members of the board, thank you very much for inviting me back to do a little education about Northeast Metro 916 Intermediate School District. I always tell our new employees that's the first thing you have to learn is that mouthful of what our name is. And it's oftentimes a little difficult to share who we are as a district, because most of us, when we went through school, had the experience of a typical K-12 school district, and so learning about what an intermediate district is something unique and different. So one of the things I usually tell our new employees is that in most states here in America, we have the local district, we have the State Department of Education, and then there's something in the middle that provides services to local districts and is a connection to the Department of Education. And the 3 intermediate districts in the metropolitan area do serve that function for the members. A couple of quick facts about who we are. There are 3 intermediate districts in the metro area here. We are 916, 917 is down in the Rosemont, Apple Valley area, and intermediate 287 is over in the Plymouth area. We serve quite a few students, around 20,000, including 33 member districts amongst the 3 intermediates. 916 alone has 12 member districts, Columbia Heights, one of them. And when we were formed by the legislature back in the late 60s, it was really for the purpose of local school districts to come together and share services. Predominantly, the 2 areas that were articulated in statute were special education, and at that time it was called vocational education. Now we use the term career and technical education. And then all 3 of the intermediates after that have morphed a little bit to provide different services to their members based on what the needs of those members are in the intermediate district. So here's our mission statement. We updated this a couple of years ago, and really we wanted to reflect what we were hearing back from our member district leaders, how they view our services, and oftentimes those words innovation, quality, and trusted experience are concepts that our members do reflect back to us. You shared earlier some of your values, and here again are our values that we ask our employees to keep in mind as they do their work for the students that you enroll in our programs and the service we provide to you in your schools. Here's the geography of Northeast Metro 916. So you think of the geography or the boundaries of your school district based on, you know, what are your geographic boundaries. Ours are quite different because it's a combination of all of our 12 member school districts, and you can see all of them listed on the slide there. We do have a couple of different levels of membership. Most of our members are regular members like Columbia Heights is, but we do offer some lesser memberships, affiliate and associate for other kinds of school districts. For example, EMED, when they had their 2 schools, Crosswinds and Harambe, they were an affiliate member and were purchasing services from us. We also have an associate member, Hudson School District, was enrolling students in our programs and finally met with the superintendent and said, you know, you could probably save some money if you actually became a member and you get a little bit more quicker service in terms of enrolling students. So membership is really important. It's been growing. Just the last couple of years, Fridley and Forest Lake have joined us. But most of our members have been very, very stable over time. We're organized through something called a Joint Powers Agreement, and that's probably a term that you've heard in discussions with WEMAP. Our school board is made up of 12 members. As you know, Laura serves the 916 board, and all of our members do appoint one of their locally elected members to sit on our school board. And then a very important element of how we're organized is through the use of our advisory councils. So Nicole, for example, sits on the Special Education Directors Advisory Council. Kathy sits on the Superintendent's Advisory Council. And we have a number of those across the district. They're a very important communication tool for us to talk to our member district leaders, to find out if we're providing services to meet their needs, if there's something new they would like us to enter into, or to change some of our programs and services. So we really appreciate the time that they spend with us, and really hope that those relationships continue to be as positive as they have been. Sometimes it's helpful to think about how we're organized in the district, and we often talk about these 3 divisions of the district: ed services, special ed, and administrative services, and I'll talk about each of those. How did we organize this? Maybe I'll talk about those first before I move on to the next slide. Ed services is anything that we do that's regular education. So a few minutes ago, Kathy mentioned some gifted and talented support that we do. We also run, as you know, some ALC programs. Columbia Heights is part of our collaboration with Spring Lake Park. We run right now an elementary school for 3 of our members down in Woodbury. And then we have a fabulous career and tech center located at Century College for high school students to come and take a 2-hour block of time of career and tech courses. Special ed, you've probably heard a lot from Nicole about our services there. We have a number of center-based programs where members like you enroll students who have some pretty significant challenges that can't be met in the local district. We also send a lot of specialists out into our member districts, so you have an opportunity to purchase the service part-time of someone that you otherwise would have to put a full-time staff in place. So that makes that whole personnel aspect very efficient for you. And then our administrative services division, most of that is internal to the district: business services, IT, HR, and business, I guess, did I say all of them? Business, HR, technology, I missed technology. But one important aspect, and Kathy mentioned this earlier, as part of my administrative services to my colleague friends around the table, all of the superintendents, I try to listen to some of the common challenges members are having and propose projects to them. And we've been working the last couple of years with this consulting group called District Management Council, and our most recent project is that academic return on investment. So we're all learning some skills of how to actually apply the outcomes of a particular initiative and whether or not we're really getting the bang for the buck that we hoped we had, and hopefully helping us be a little bit more sensitive to whether or not we want to keep piling program on top of program on top of program, and are we really getting the benefit that we hoped we would. Always have lots of anecdotal stories on how well things are working, but this is really forcing us as administrators to use some really important data to do a deeper analysis. And my part in the partnership is to hire this research data analyst that Kathy spoke of earlier to share with all of the districts that are participating. It's been such an interesting project for the superintendents that we've actually attracted 2 districts outside of our collaborative. So it seems to be a growing area of interest amongst the superintendents. So a moment ago I mentioned some of the programs that we have, our area learning centers, and you certainly recognize the Metro Heights Academy, but you can see other area learning centers that we have. We're always in discussion with other districts that want to do some partnering on area learning centers, so that's a growing area for us. Our Career and Tech Center, very popular, lots of opportunities for students. It's one of the best kept secrets in the metropolitan area, but anybody who comes and visits says it's great opportunities for students. Our longest list, as you can see, is special ed, and that's what we're typically known most for, is our special education programs. We're in the process of going through some consolidation of these programs into buildings to hopefully become more efficient for our member districts, and we are starting to see that happen, particularly in transportation with our new Karner Blue Education Center that opened up. And then a moment ago I mentioned Valley Crossing. Back in the early 90s, 3 of our member districts needed elementary seats, and so They formed this unique collaboration amongst the three of them to build a very unique elementary school in Woodbury, and they hired 916 to manage the program. Since that time, the needs of the three districts have changed, and I'm in my 9th year at 916. We've been talking about the future of Valley for those 9 years, and lo and behold, last week, it was finally decided what the future of Valley is going to be. So Stillwater and North St. Paul are going to be selling their equity in the building to South Washington County Schools, who will take it over in about 16 months. It will become one of their schools, and so we too are going to be going through a transition process for the staff at Valley who are our employees, and then the three districts will be working on a transition plan for the parents. So you might pick up some news about that in the newspapers over the next couple of weeks. We're sad to see Valley go. It's been kind of a lighthouse program for us because it's the only, typical school that we run. But we'll be sad, but we're happy to see it transition to a great school district, South Washington County Schools. So who do we serve? We serve quite a few students every year, about 4,500 to 5,000 students, and you can see the numbers in each of those programs. The special ed number, 895, 900 each year. At any given moment, we only have about half that number in our programs. But many of these students are transitioning in and out of the programs, as Nicole Wells knows, over time. So we do touch quite a few of those students throughout the year. And then Valley Crossing, as I said, will go away, and clearly Metro Heights is part of those 2,000 students that we see at the Area Learning Center. And I know your board members have come to the graduation at Metro Heights over the years, and it's always fun to hear their stories and their transformation that happens with them when things finally click for them as they make their way through the program. The little notes there at the bottom just give you an idea of how do we get students? How do they come to us? Because you capture students through a boundary of residents that live in your district, and we don't capture all the students, obviously, that live in the boundaries of our district, but most of them do come to us through a referral process. So the special ed students are obviously always referred through that IEP process, and the Career and Tech Center students actually sign up for classes when they go through their high school registration. And area learning centers are a little bit different. Students elect to go to the area learning centers that they want to, so they find us all on their own. And then Valley Crossing was enrolled through those 3 member districts. So this we did a couple of years ago to try to get a visual of where are all of our students coming from. And as you can see, all of those points, they are coming from quite a wide geographic area. And one of the challenges that we were having before we started this process of consolidating our programs is that sometimes a student, let's say up in Spring Lake Park, needed placement in a special ed program and there was nothing close by, and so they were traveling all the way down to our program that's part of the Valley Crossing School. That's where all the green dots are. And so as you can imagine, the transportation costs were pretty significant, and also that long of a bus ride for many of those students can be quite challenging. So as we consolidate these programs, even though the students might still be coming from this wide range, hopefully the schools that they'll go to will be much closer to where they live. And here's a slide of where all of our programs currently are. You recognize Metro Heights Academy and Carner Blue up in Blaine is the one that we just opened up. We are in the process of getting started on a similar building to Carner Blue down in Lake Elmo. I think you can see a Lake Elmo Park Reserve, so it'll be close to there. And then we'll be closing a couple of small programs. John Glenn and Valley Crossing will close, and those students will move into that building. So that will allow us to have 2 buildings serving the same kind of population, but located to the population centers of where those students are at. Ed Services, as I mentioned, is everything regular education. Dr. Jean Jordan is the director of Ed Services, and besides overseeing those programs that we talked about, she also is sort of a networking specialist, if you will, with all the professionals in our member districts who want to talk about all of those things on the list there. Curriculum, we've been part of the Region 11 Math and Science, professional development, curriculum, technology integration are all those things that she oversees inside of our district as well. Area Learning Centers, you're very familiar with that in terms of our partnership with you. Opportunity for students to get a little bit more individualized approach, smaller setting, and oftentimes can have success when they couldn't have success in a typical high school. Career and Tech Center, I mentioned earlier, a variety of programs. We'd love to have you actually come and visit and see the opportunities students have there. We attract students who are high performing. We have a couple of medical programs, and sometimes students who are thinking of going into the medical field actually start at our Career and Tech Center and get some experience there. And then we have a variety of other courses there. And I mentioned Valley Crossing. Let's move into special ed, because I've got my partner, Nicole Hollaby, sitting here next to me. A large variety of services that we provide. A lot of the services you see in the list there, many of them are provided in our programs, but we also have opportunity to provide some of those services to the member districts and to share some of those specialists. Teachers for the blind and visually impaired is something that we just added about a year and a half ago. St. Paul Public Schools used to provide those services to the region, and late in the year they said, guess what, we can't do it anymore, 916, can we pass it on to you? So we very, very quickly put a program together. Searching for teachers is probably one of the hardest to find teachers. We were going into countries outside of the United States to find staff to fill that program, but Jay did a great job of filling the needs of our members, and it's a growing area. Here's the profile of the different students that we serve in our programs, and as you probably heard in your own local programs here, two of the big groups are autism and EBD, as well as cognitively delayed, hard of hearing, other disabilities, and severe and multiply handicapped. And I know some of you have been out and visited our programs, so you've had a chance to see our students who are served in these programs, and maybe even had a chance to say, okay, that one's from Columbia Heights, that's one of our students. Administrative services, as I mentioned earlier, much of that is internal to the district, but it's also an opportunity for us to provide services to our members. Top one on the list, I know you're very familiar with, Karen Keppel, who we have hired to be a part of 916, and then she shares her time with those districts that want to purchase her services. And so we've had a great partnership with her, and you have an opportunity to purchase legal services at a much reduced cost than you would going out to one of the standard law firms. And then those number of other services that we provide as well. Fiscal information, sometimes it's interesting to know a little bit about that. We have a pretty significant budget, as you can see, and some of the services that we provide, and an opportunity to save some dollars because you are a part of a collaborative. I talked about legal services, and interpreters is another very expensive service to go out and buy in the market, and being a part of 916, you have access to those services at a much reduced cost. I don't know why I have two slides of those, but a little bit on strategic planning, because I know that you folks do that as well. And we just redid our vision and our strategic directions. And here's the three that we're going to be working on. Now, as a typical school district, you talk a lot about getting kids ready for college so that they can be successful in college. Well, if you're familiar with the students that you enroll in many of our programs, you know that many of them will not be going to college, but they will be moving on to some kind of adult service. So we wanted to get our staff to kind of think about that same transition process and what are they doing in the classroom every day to plan to get kids ready for their next steps. And so that's how we have articulated that aspect. And then I told the staff when we were going through our strategic planning that it took me, I don't know, maybe almost 17 years to figure out as a superintendent that staff engagement is probably one of the most important things that I need to pay attention to as a superintendent, and what am I going to do differently to improve that. And so we're having lots of conversation about how to improve staff engagement, because we believe that that transitions into better student engagement. And then, of course, we're always talking about resources, just like all of our member districts, how we can do things effectively and deliver the programs that our members want in an efficient manner. Quickly, a little bit about our facilities plan. Those of you that have been around the table for a few years know that we've been talking about this since probably 6 to 8 years now. And we took quite a bit of time in the early stages of this process to talk to all of our members and to ask them, is this a collaboration that you think is going to continue into the future? And indeed, in the area of special ed, our member district directors did say there's probably always going to be a need for outplacement for some of our students, and so if not 916, where? And that was our signal that you know, we're going to stay together as a collaborative, and we'll want to find a way to better serve your students in more contemporary facilities. And so we have been moving through the process. We finished off number 1 there with the opening of Karner Blue. As I said earlier, we've got land purchased in Lake Elmo, and we've started planning, and we hope to be opening up that building in 2017. And then the last step is probably the most complicated one, and Laura's probably been keeping you up to date on Capitol View. It's our high school facility located in just a great location for our member districts. Very, very old building, and we need to find a way to make a decision about that building. And I think Laura has shared some materials with you. The 916 board is going through a pretty extensive review process of what should be the solution for Capitol View, either to refurbish that building or to start over. And but we have a problem, and that is we don't even have authority from the legislature to fix the building if that is indeed the solution the board wants to land on. So I've spent the last 4 years at the legislature trying to get a fix to that and continue that this year, so that if the board wants that option, that can be a reality for us. So we continue to work on that, and so the decision for Capitol View is out a few years, but we'll keep progressing through that. Some of you, did anybody get a chance? I know Nicole has visited Karner Blue. Have any of you had a chance to visit? Oh, that's right. Now I remember you had, did you have something on your leg at the time? You'd had surgery? Yeah, okay. It's ringing a bell now. I remember you. So it's a beautiful facility, and it's kind of a combination in design that includes hospital behavioral health and education. So aspects of what they do in a hospital to help students be calm and to learn how to regulate their own behavior and not have the elements in a typical school that really get in the way of kids having success. And I know Nicole's been hearing lots of stories about how well it's working, and we really feel like we've created perhaps a national model of what can work with students who have these significant challenges. And the families are just, you know, telling us great stories. Kids want to come to school. We're actually, since we're not spending as much time on behaviors, we get to do a little bit more teaching, and kids are learning to read better, and they're taking books, you know, home, and it's just a great a great success story, and we hope to continue that with the Lake Elmo building and also into the Carner Blue, or to the Capitol View building. So here's who sits on my cabinet. Myself, Dan Naditz, our Director of Special Ed, Christine Carr, Director of Admin Services, and Jean Jordan, Director of Educational Services. They're the ones who I say always make me look smarter than I am. And then obviously our great partners and your representative to the 916 board. A large board, but they work very well together, and all of them do a great job of sharing our story back with the local board, and I know Laura does a great job sharing our stories back with you. So with that, I talked longer than I thought I would, but I'd be happy to answer any questions any of the members have about who we are and what we do, and anything I can do to help you understand the services that you have as part of our collaboration is why I wanted to speak to you tonight.
I was just kind of talking to Kristen and Jody today with ECSE and how, you're kind of connected with them too. It's just kind of amazing, the stuff that you guys do, especially at Carner Blue. When I visited there, it was just amazing facility. I think, me and Laura talked about it, about how quiet it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. I mean, you walk in that building and you don't really hear a thing. I mean, even when they're in the lunchroom, it's like completely soundproof, and it's just a benefit to all those kids that are there.
Yeah,
So.
thank you for that feedback. Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to quickly add that the families in the 12 years that I've been with Columbia Heights are really appreciative of the programming that 916 provides for their kids. Many of the kids that by the time they get to 916 have had a lot of struggles in any regular education setting. Even though we have great teachers and great EAs and support staff, many of these students need the beautiful, soothing settings. I told Superintendent Hayes that I became very calm when I went there, and I could maybe have a little remodeling of my office too, but the board wouldn't approve for the cost. But it's really ideal. The programming, the staff there is of the highest quality. They recruit amazing staff. And one of the pieces that I'm glad you brought up that we often forget about is that we purchase. We have 9 staff members that we purchase parts of from Northeast Metro 916 that honestly, for a small district our size, it would be impossible to find somebody of a .2 who is highly skilled as an occupational therapist or physical therapist or speech, or we have sign language interpreters and vision services that we used to get from St. Paul. We would not be able to provide that for our students here in Columbia Heights. And so it's really a valuable, valuable piece that they recruit these high-quality people, and we're able to purchase small pieces of them to serve the kids who are in our district. So I'm very appreciative of everything that 916 does, and I'm a big cheerleader and supporter. Laura knows that, so thank you.
Ted, do you have some?
Well, I just wanted to, you hit on what I was gonna say as well, but what I love about 916 is it helps us further our mission for each individual to develop their talents and unleash their potential.
Yeah.
So we don't have the tools here in this district to do all that, and you do, so it's great we could partner with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Kind of our goal was, especially we do hear lots from Laura about what's going on, but Molly and Grant are both new to the board, so our hopes was you would come out and give us an overview of what you're doing. You did a really nice job, so thank you.
Well, invite me back anytime. I'm always happy to come out, so.
During the
Even on a
summer
snowy
months,
night.
all right?
Yeah.
What's that?
During the summer months.
Yeah. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda will be discussion about the OPEB trust. Presenter will be Bill Holmgren and a soon-to-be-named assistant.
Chair Larkin, members of the school board, Superintendent Kelly. Tonight, as you all know, back in 2009, we started a OPEB trust for our employees as they retire. This is Merle Waters from Wells Fargo, and he is the manager of our fund. And he'll give us an update of what's been happening with that fund over the last year.
I'll wait just a moment while we pass the booklets out. I'll start just briefly. Before we look at the district's trust here, I thought maybe it would be helpful to take a look at on a summary page, actually, which would be page 3 in the booklet. It's got some yellow shading on the far right-hand side. And what that is showing is the 13 districts that we work with right now in managing their OPEB trust assets. You'll see a column of current value, so the total value of the OPEB trust assets collectively now with the 13 districts, about a little under $215 million. There's a column there as well for investment gain towards the middle of that page, showing the investment gain there of $58 million. So the investment gain overall of about $58 million with an original funding value of $119 million. And again, within the OPEB statute or the environment that we work within, previously school districts were restricted to investing only in government or government agency fixed income securities. And we all know what checking accounts and bonds yield in today's low interest rate environment. So in hindsight now, it was a very good decision that this district made in being able to now, with statute 356A again, which governs OPEB trusts, to invest in securities like equities, real estate, even private equity, for example. And really the whole thought behind that is to match your long-term healthcare liabilities with long-term assets. So any questions on anything listed on page 3, the summary page? Very good. If we turn to the next page, page 4. And the information here is as of January 31. If you look at the far right-hand column at the top, you'll see a grand total there of about $5.6 million, just a little over $5.6 million is the value as of January 31, again, in your OPEB trust. There's a pie chart in the lower right corner that shows target allocation. That lists the target allocations for the various asset classes, and again, that all ties back to statute 356A. So you can see a target there, the green shading for fixed income of 40%. So again, a large allocation to fixed income. Equities of 40%, and then 2 other categories that have 10% targets that we refer to as real assets. So think commodities, again, another permissible investment with 356A, commodities, real estate. And the other, which is, it shows as comp strategies, that's really a catch-all for other types of private equity, for example, would fall in that. So you could invest in you hear a lot today about private equity firms and investing in companies or taking companies private again. And so you actually are permitted by state statute to invest in investments like that. There's nothing in the trust of that. Again, there's the minimum investments for a fund like that are very, very high. But we do have a box shown under alternative investments in the middle of that page, and that does list 5 different, really non-traditional types of investments that we do hold in the portfolio. So there is some commercial real estate, there's some publicly traded real estate funds, there is some quasi-commodity exposure with what are called master limited partnerships. Those are pipelines and storage tanks, investment companies that own and operate those. So again, it's just an effort to diversify out of just the traditional equities and fixed income securities. The pie chart on the left-hand side gives you a sense of how the portfolio is allocated as of January 31, and again, we're almost right in line with the allocation targets. And that's consistent with a team that we have internally that basically gives individuals like me guidance in terms of, do we want to overweight or underweight, in other words, emphasize or de-emphasize those various asset classes. And at this point, the work that they've done forecasting for this year, we want to be neutral to our target allocations. Are there any questions on allocations? I'm just going to skip over very briefly page 5. That's just giving you a sense of, we wanted to capture the more meaningful adjustments that we make to the trust over time. And that's what this is showing. So every time there's a sale or a purchase in the portfolio, that's not going to be listed here, but more meaningful rebalancing work that we do within the trust is listed here. We have this information that goes back to the inception that Bill mentioned back in 2009, and so if there's ever an interest in looking at what has occurred in the portfolio over the last 5 or 6 years as we move through this, we can certainly provide that. But just in the interest of paper saving, the last 12 months would be listed here. On page 6, oftentimes in the investment industry, we talk a lot about percentage this and percentage that, and really what we find is more meaningful to districts to understand about the trust is the actual dollar increase in market value. And so the gray shaded box in the lower right there shows a gain of just a little over $1.5 million since the inception of the trust. And again, the inception goes back to around May of 2009. And again, this is more just historical information here as well, with any contributions or additions that have been made to the trust, and of course the disbursements that have been made out of the trust. And then finally, I mentioned percentage terms. We do have to present percentage returns to you as well. So the information that's shown on page 7, and I apologize for the size of the print. I know it's very small. But there are 2 columns I wanted to focus on the bottom of this page. One that's last 12 months. So that gives you calendar 2014. And then since inception, the far right-hand column. So if we start with the far right-hand, since inception, the total return there, you'll see at 5.4%. So that's an annualized rate of return, so 5.4% per year. Not linear, but averaged out 5.4%. The target rate of return that we set for the trust at the inception or at the time of funding, and that was based on modeling that we did, projecting, looking at liabilities versus our assumed rates of return, was right at about 5.6%. So we're very close to that. Our focus with this trust, we are not trying to hit home runs. We're not trying to hit triples even. We're trying to take just enough risk to get the return target that we're aiming for there. So to be quite honest with you, in a year like last year, or even 2013 when we had huge gains in the equity markets, you're not going to see that in this trust. But you're also not going to see a 2002 or a 2008 in the way this is structured as well. The last 12 months then, just to touch on that very briefly, 2.84%, that looks like a low number. When you think about, you hear so much about the U.S. equity market. Again, last year, if you think of the index that's used a lot is the S&P 500. So think of companies like Johnson & Johnson and Pepsi, those big, large multinational companies. The index of those companies did return about 14% last year, just a little under 14%. But when you get outside of the U.S., returns were flat to slightly negative, actually. And even within the U.S., it was principally in the large cap market, so those big multinational companies that perform very well. Small cap companies, for example, were up very modestly in that 3 to 4% range. And with our approach being very broadly diversified globally and just within the size of companies we invest in, when you roll the equity portion of that together, it came in at 575. You can see a number across from the equities there. And again, what pulled the number back down a little bit more to that 2.84% is, again, you think of the interest rate environment today. We are managing a very short term, I don't want to say necessarily very short term, but a generally what we mean short term, so short maturity bonds in your portfolio. And again, we all know what yields are like. The 10-year Treasury, for example, is yielding about 1.65 to 1.7% today, which as a side note sounds very low, but if you were in Europe right now, you would be looking at the German 10-year at about 0.6% and on its way even lower at this point, in some cases even negative.
I actually have a question here. Now, I see that the additions with the initial funding here, and we're just about flat with, after the disbursements. Are we putting enough into this account to keep up with demands? Because, we would want
Great
that
question.
account balance to be higher.
Yep, yes, that's a very good question. Every couple of years, every 2 years, the state requires a new actuarial study be completed for the district, and that would set the liability stream or the liability that you have. The good news is the liability has been coming down. In terms of are you, or have you funded enough in the trust? When we get the actuarial study, we will actually redo our modeling work to see what the duration or how long the trust can last. At this point, yes, I mean, you are matching, which is good. The liability is coming down, which means the assumed rate of return, so if you think back to that 5.6% was the original target that we had developed, it's actually probably lower today, if you look at that. Another way to look at it, though, is like you're looking here, is the total disbursements match the net increase in value. I would be concerned if those numbers differed, if you were already, if you were starting to work backwards, if you will. It's close.
It's very close.
It's close.
It's very close.
And so it's important for us and in doing work with Bill to just continue to, do our projections, do our modeling. One change we did make to address reaching a higher rate of return was that when we originally funded the trust, we had a target for cash of 10%, for example. I mean, if you think back in 2009, that's just coming off of 2008, and that was a very uncomfortable period of time. And so we had a 10% cash target, so you had 10% of the portfolio that was really earning zero for a period of time. We have modified the allocation targets over time to be a little bit more growthy oriented, so I'm comfortable we can keep pace at this point, but if we do see where that's working backwards, absolutely we need to have a conversation about allocation or funding.
Yeah, that was the other question I had, was the 2% cash. It seems like that's, I mean, even a savings account would be better than just straight up cash. So.
Well, the cash, it would.
Yeah, I'm sure
By
it's.
cash, I'm meaning a money market.
Money market, yeah.
Yeah. I don't have our capper with us tonight, but if you remember when we had the report
Yes.
last fall, we actually are overfunded in our OPEB trust.
That's right.
So it is in a better position than we anticipated, and we are, like I say, at this point, overfunded against what the liability we have. So we're sitting very well.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it certainly looks healthy. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's just I always consider, cost of living increases, inflation, and I'd like to see this number, be higher. Of course, we all would, right? So.
And again,
So that's why I'm just asking, is there something that we should be looking at now to make sure that this isn't all of a sudden, we have to, put a couple $1 million into this trust to make it viable? That's the thing that concerns me.
Yeah, and like I said, at this point, we're overfunded, so
Okay.
there's no need right now to any type of influx of cash to put into the fund.
Okay.
you're in a very good situation relative to some of the other districts.
Okay, I'm not complaining. No.
Very good question, though.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on? Yes.
Ms. Ryan, could you explain why the liabilities are decreasing for the public's benefit?
Well, I couldn't tell you that without studying our actuarial report, and actually, our new actuarial report will be out here probably in the next month. So actually, we probably can do a report on that for you at that time. Right now, we actually don't have a lot of retirees on, that have already retired. So we're not paying out a lot of dollars for our OPEB liability. We don't have a huge liability right this minute. And since I've been here, what I'm seeing is we have a lot more employees not retiring at 57. They're 60, 61, 62. So we're paying out a lot less period of time, any type of a benefit to them, because it only goes up to their 65. Okay, so, and we have right now a lot of employees who have retired are all coming off. They're all turning 65 in the last 2 years. I mean, there's it's dropped in half of how many retirees that we're paying out on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's tied to the number of retirees and how long.
Yeah, so we can,
No.
I guess we can give you an updated number on that and what's expected to happen the next couple of years.
Great, thank you.
And perhaps even to your question, then once the study's back, we can do another projection and really see where we stand.
Good.
Very good. Just very briefly on pages 8 and 9, 8, 9, and 10 actually. And if you thought the earlier pages were hard to read, these are worse. I did include a copy of a document that we refer to as an investment policy statement, and that simply is it's a tool to document what the allocation targets are for your trust. It puts a range around those targets that I mentioned earlier, so if you think of 40% equities, you will never see this trust 80% equities. There's a range around that of plus or minus 10%. That's, again, just to provide some guidelines to us. We can certainly always change the targets, but this document it's a way to try and be as specific as you can while being as general as you can to allow us the flexibility to manage the trust based on changing market conditions. So, and if you ever would like a more easily readable copy, I can certainly provide that. With that, I'll not launch into the market overview. That's the end. If you do have any questions, though, on the market, I'll certainly answer them, or if you have any other questions regarding your trust.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, appreciate you coming out on the snowy night.
Great, thank you.
All right, next up is the Strategic Roadmap F, Fiscally Responsible. Excuse me, the board will be presented with information on Strategic Roadmap F. Fiscally Responsible presenter will be Bill Holmgren.
Okay, tonight we're going to talk about our strategic plan a little bit, on how we measure, that strategic plan and what the different areas. And my job, of course, is to look at the direction F, remain fiscally responsible. So again, we've talked about what our mission is tonight already, but of course we are here to create worlds of opportunity for every learner. When we look at our core values, and we look at the finances of the district, we're really looking at excellence and integrity, very important. Oh. And as you can see on our different strategic directions, down on F, remain fiscally responsible. That's what we'll talk about shortly tonight. In your packet, I've included strategic direction F, so you can see the measures that we have. And we'll start with the unrestricted fund balance. As you know, this past year, our fund balance did drop a little bit. If you look on the card, or the vision card, you see that, that our policy is to keep our fund balance within 6 and 10% of the previous year's expenditures. We have dropped down to 9.6, but of course that's within our policy, so we're still at vision. So we're still at a level 5. The next piece is where we did have some changes this past year. This is where we had a variation in our budget of 2%. Most auditors will tell you, within 2%, you're really doing okay. I know when we talked about putting these measures in place, we thought, oh, we'll do better than 2, no problem. But you can see that we did have a 2% variance. And because of that, we dropped from level 4 to level 3. So we're seeing a drop in that area of the strategic direction F. So you can see that we dropped 0.9% in that annual variation. And we'll be talking next week. We'll be bringing the revised budget for this year to you, and we'll talk about what we've done to make sure that we don't have a 2% variance in our budget. When we look at budget alignment, what we're looking at here is the amount of dollars that are being spent in the classroom. And our goal, if you look on the other sheet, is 65%. And you can see we remain the same there, with the money that's going in the classroom at 68.6%. So we are at vision there at level 5. Our capital timelines were all hit this past year, 100%. So we're at level 5. And also the budgets within those capital projects all were within budget. So those came out very well. If you remember last spring, when we sent out our surveys out to our community, our quality of our facilities actually moved up, so we're very happy about that. Moving from 93.7 to 94, but of course we were at vision at the time, so it hasn't changed. We're still at level 5, but we have increased the percentage a little bit. When you look at our operating levy, when we first looked at putting this measure in place, I think the idea was, we wanted to have our operating levy, close to other districts. Of course, that hasn't changed. We renewed our levy this past year, which was great, but we're about half of what other districts are. So we're still at level 2 there, and it's been that way since we started. Then the last one is our satisfaction with financial management. And here too, we actually bumped up in our surveying, which was very nice to see. So we went from a 76.9 to a 82.8. But again, we were already at vision, so this changed. I mean, this stayed the same. So really what's the biggest thing that happened this past year when we look at what's happening with our finances was that annual variation decreased down to 2%. And because of the importance of this, I think it's very important too that the annual variation needs to be within 1%. You see that we weight that at 20%. So that's why you really see a change there. That's really driving the change. So we are dropping down from where we were the year before, from 87 to 75 as an overall score on this vision card for strategic direction F. So are there any questions?
I just have one. We have 15% there for the operating levy in comparison to similar metro districts, because we levy at approximately half of what a similar district does. Shouldn't that actually be considered a positive thing?
Well,
You know, I mean, that's one of those things, I've always been puzzled by that, because it's saying, we're doing so much more with so much less. You know, that I look at that as a positive thing.
I guess, yeah, you can look at it either way. Either, we don't have as much as others, but we're
That
doing a
is
good
true.
job with the money that we have. I think when the time comes, within a couple of years, when we kind of reevaluate our measures, this is when we need to talk about whether that's a adequate measure for our district and if that's something that's important to us. So that's not gonna change. It's gonna stay there
No,
at 2.
no.
It's not gonna move up. So when we talk about vision, I don't think this is something that is gonna move.
So the change in the gauges is strictly based on the variation and the amount of weight that's placed on it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because we are at vision at most areas.
Right.
That one, of course, we're not. We're at a level 3. And then, again, the operating levy's at a level 2. Otherwise, everything else is at a level 5.
But the only thing that changed was the variation, right? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Ted?
Is the variation more just controlling costs, or what is it?
Well, the variation, our biggest thing that changed this past year, from what we talked about, it actually happened on the revenue side. Our expenditures actually came in under budget for the year, which I was very happy about. And that might be something we want to talk about in the future too, when we talk about our variation. We might want to split, talk about the variation in our revenues, talk about the variation in our expenditures as a separate thing. But right now, they're combined. But we had 3 big things that happened on our revenue side that were really out of our control, but they happened. And if you remember, targeted services is one of them. Because, the types of students that come to us and how the delivery happens, we end up with less revenue than we anticipated. And that was actually a big piece of like $250,000. So that was a big, shortage in our revenue, okay? And the special ed was another one. They changed the way that special ed revenue was coming in. The expectation at the time and the information we had from MDE was actually we would get a little more revenue, but instead we got less. So that was kind of the surprise at the end of the year, and we never know about it till we get to June anyway. The third piece was our transportation revenue for reimbursement for desegregation dollars, and that was another $200,000 hit. So those 3 things were what really made our revenue short for the year. And like I say, next week when we go through the budget in detail, we'll talk about how we've repaired that issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bill? Okay, thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, next up, the levy implementation planning, and I'll turn that one over to Superintendent Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Bill's going to stay put, Brian's going to join the team, and we just want to do something that will probably become a rite of passage in February every year, and that has to do with our capital projects plan. As I said to you in work study, and I said to both the chair and the vice chair in our planning meeting, that When we were looking at how we spent the money for the last capital projects in 1998 and beyond, some of the records were not as clear as we would have liked to have hoped. And so what this team has made a commitment to ourselves, to the community, and to, most importantly, to you at the table, is that on a yearly basis, we will put out for the next 10 years how we are spending the levy dollars that the community gave us in addition for capital. In addition to that, we know there's always questions about, well, how are you spending the money that you had before? So at the tail end of this presentation, Bill will also address some of the things that we're doing over the course of this next year out of some of our additional or our supplemental capital dollars. But the most important thing I want to say is that a thank you to the community for allowing us to have this discussion tonight, because if they hadn't voted for the levy, we wouldn't be having that. And for all the hard work that went in on the part of the people around the table and the community for voting it. And then a special thank you to Brian and Bill, who meet with me every Monday. And what we're trying to do is really load this thing out for the next 10 years to make sure that we are hitting every single thing that we told the community we were going to do, so that we can be transparent and authentic. With that, I would like to pass the baton to my partners in crime, Brian and Bill.
Okay. Yes, we're, like Kathy said, we're going to just run through what we're looking at doing for this next year. Again, the mission. We want to stay focused on the mission, and we are really here to create worlds of opportunity for every learner in this district. And when we look at our core values, and we look at this capital projects levy, now we're really looking at that community piece, because they really are a partner with us, taking care of the buildings that are here for the students of this district for many years to come. And if you remember, what we did, we talked about if we would get this levy, we would split this levy between technology and facilities. Facilities being approximately 60%, and the technology piece being approximately 40%. And we're using the money for, if you remember, we had a facilities plan at the time with a long list of pieces that need to be done to our buildings. Of course, we need to replace and repair roofs, windows, doors, plumbing, and casework, replacing and repairing furnaces and boilers, repairing water damage and siding, brick tuck pointing, resurfacing athletic track, improving signage, repairing parking and driveways.
And then, of course, there was the technology piece where we talked about increasing bandwidth to support our personalized learning initiative and devices, increasing our parent-student portal technologies, that communication with our families, increasing technology systems in the safety and security area, expanding network and infrastructure capacity for the wireless access. Again, that's the device piece that ties into the internet bandwidth and that broadband piece. And of course, the acquiring technology devices and the software and training that goes along with that. So those were the key things in general that we were talking about from the technology part.
Okay, for 2016, what were the big pieces, of course, is going to be the parking and drive improvements for Highland Elementary. This is really a safety issue. Again, it's like we looked at the Columbia Academy of trying to get separation between the buses and our parents, keeping kids from running between buses and so forth. So we will separate the cars, the parents, the cars and students from our bus area. Next, over at Columbia Academy, we're going to start with our brick tuck pointing. We have actually some areas of the walls where actually water is penetrating and coming down into lockers. We're going to take care of that so it stops. Then in front of the high school, we are going to replace those front doors. And a little later, there'll be some other pieces to that. But these are the pieces we'll use the actual levy for.
On the technology side, as discussed quite a bit, that personalized learning initiative and those devices are key to us moving forward. We talk a lot about the college and career readiness pathway, helping the students meet those benchmarks and achieving those life skills, and that personalized learning expansion is a big part of completing that. And for next year, currently we have it in our 6th and 7th grade. So next year with the levy dollars, we will be able to expand 5th and 8th grade and continue that work. It's going to be very interesting bringing it down into that 5th grade and working with 3 separate buildings and making sure that our plans implement well into each one of those buildings. Of course, we're talking about student devices, so one of the biggest portions of the the biggest portion of the technology with levy dollars is talking about purchasing student devices. In the first part of the 10-year kind of plan for next year, one of the big things is getting that network, that wireless infrastructure up to speed as we're implementing these devices. There's a component in there for classroom technology that's more that instructional technology. We do have things like video systems, Promethean or interactive whiteboards, projection systems, sound systems in classrooms, and some of these dollars will be used to replace systems that are 5 years or older or systems that are no longer functioning. And then, of course, there's a component of staff development, which is critical. And as Bill will talk about later, again, this is just the things that we're using to the levy dollars for, specifically for the 2016 fiscal year. When we talk about that 60%, 40% split, the $400,000 roughly for technology, it goes really fast when you start talking about the number of students and the size of our buildings and what we really need to accomplish. So it's not an expansive list when we look at just the levy dollars, but we do have additional capital dollars in our general budgets that we are using both on Bill's side and on my side that go along with this. Is just for really this component at this point. And then if you want to look at it in a whole pie, this is just kind of the breakdown of the total levy dollars, both from the buildings and ground side, the facility side, really, and then the technology side. So it just kind of breaks it down by percentage and where we're spending the money for the fiscal year 2016 with the planned projects. So, and as Kathy said, every year we'll just kind of come out in February and talk about, okay, what are the big things for next year that we're going to be using the levy dollars for? What's our plan for those? In a broad strokes, of course, and as we move forward into the year, because February is about the time we have to have those things kind of lined up and ironed out if we want to accomplish them in the summer.
Okay, I just want to touch on other projects that we're doing. 'Cause when we look at our total capital plan for a year, I mean, our new capital projects levy is a very nice piece that we're going to be able to add on. But of course, we get regular capital dollars, we get some deferred maintenance dollars, health and safety dollars, and of course, we do use some general fund dollars too. So besides the 3 projects I formally mentioned, over at North Park, we're going to be putting in a secure front entry. Over at Highland, we actually have another steam leak. For everybody that knows that, a couple years ago, the big leak we had on the ground. This one's a little smaller and it's not going to cost quite as much, but we do have a steam leak between this building and Highland under the parking lot. Okay, the high school, besides the doors I mentioned, there will be a full curtain front, all new windows on the front of the entry at the high school. Valley View, of course, we're remodeling the kindergarten rooms with capital dollars and health and safety dollars. And then we're going to get, after we finish the drives outside, we're going to put new signage up for both the high school and Highland Elementary School. And then the PAC is going to have an improvement with the sound and projection in that room. So I just want to give you a bigger, kind of a bigger picture of what capital dollars are doing besides just the pieces for the levy.
And Bill, if I could just interject, when we're talking about remodeling, those are the former kindergarten rooms, for those of you new to the board. The kindergartners are in the incubator, as I like to say, the early learning incubator now, and we have the 2 rooms left, and so we'll turn those into science and art.
I think that's all we have. Yep.
Any questions? Comments? I will say I appreciate you taking the time. I do agree that it's important that, everybody out there knows, number one, thank you for supporting the levies, but secondly, being able to go back and say, this is what those dollars were spent for, being able to track them. So thanks for taking the time. It's got to be hard to decide what it is you want to be able to do first. So
Makes for lively discussions.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I just want to say thank you for the transparency and showing us what you're using it for. That's what I really support that as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Next up, an Achieve Program update. The board will be presented with an update on the Achieve Program. Presenter will be Nicole Hallaby.
Thank you, Chair Larkin, Superintendent Kelly, members of the school board. I really appreciate you having me come in, and so we can talk about the Achieve program. First, for the new board members, and a refresher for the returning members, talk about the history of the inception of it, and what's going on now, and what our recommendations for next year going forward are. As far as the history, about 5 years ago, I was thinking about that. I thought, my goodness, that was a long time ago, when we started planning for what to do for the following year at the academy. We had talked to staff, to parents, and really looked at how the classes, when sixth graders come into the academy, for those of you who have had sixth graders or currently do, some of the struggling students who struggle academically particularly, all of a sudden they have 8 classes, block schedule, moving around, and it gets to be very confusing. A lot of kids in the middle school have organizational issues where they lose things. And imagine on top of just the normal hormones of being preteen teen, if you are a low reader, struggle in math and reading. So those were the kind of students that we looked at. We talked to the 3 principals regarding 5th graders. Some of the kids that they thought might struggle in the academy. We went and visited other school districts who have kind of a school within a school alternative learning placement or program, in their building. Superintendent Hayes talked about alternative learning centers, which are separate centers separated from the school. The programs, the alternative learning programs, or ALPs, occur right inside of the school. So we looked at that model, we looked at those programs. We certainly wanted our academy kids to feel like they were part of the academy, part of the peers that they had grown up with if they had been in our district. So we knew we wanted to go with uniform, as we did the other kids, so that they would all feel like they fit in. And we just looked at that these kids needed really intensive, particular English, reading, math instruction, and in small groups. And also we looked at building in kind of community building, social skills, and working with the kids that way, and we brought in some curriculum. We were fortunate, Rick Hammond wrote a grant, or one of our famous, you hear his name all the time, grant writer, wrote a grant and was able to, with Spring Lake Park, deliver some reading curriculum called Fusion. And it is very expensive, but we were able to get it at almost no cost, and had our reading teacher at the time trained in that program. So we rolled it out to families. Achieve has always been an opt-in program. No student was told you have to go to Achieve. We had criteria that we looked at, low reading, struggling in math, maybe poor attendance. Family would say, gee, we don't know what to do with him or her. We can't get them to do their homework. They don't seem to be understanding. So you possibly had some mental health issues. So we had a list of criteria, but the focus really was our lowest learners that weren't receiving intensive special education services. So obviously we have some really excellent special education teachers at the academy, some Setting 3 programs, and that was not for those kinds of kids. This could be a kid on an IEP and special ed or not, but just struggling in areas of their life, particularly academic. So the first year, 4 years ago, we started with a teacher who was licensed in math and social studies, a teacher in reading and language arts, and we take bits and pieces from the Academy of FTEs of Phi-Ed, science, and arts. So we take these pieces and build a full staff. We also to make it work. As we studied the programs and met with Minnesota Department of Ed, the gentleman who was in charge of the area learning centers and the area learning programs, said you really need to dedicate more administrative staff than you think you need to the program if you want it to be successful. So at that time, Assistant Principal John Awesome was fully dedicated to Achieve. And then we felt as the program grew and people understood the expectations, families understood the expectations, and the curriculum became stronger, that we could share an FTE for an assistant principal between the academy and Achieve. So that is currently as it is today. I oversee the Achieve program. I supervise it. So we meet with the staff, meet with families, research, best practices in curriculum. So as you can tell, we're talking about 60 kids, 20 in 6th, 27 and 20 in 8th. It's a very, very costly program for a small amount of kids, 60 kids. When you start talking about 4 full-time FTEs, because we have a special ed teacher dedicated to the kids that are on an IP in the program, and 3 part-time FTEs, and this year a part-time assistant principal. So it's very costly. And all of the programs that we talked to in the different school districts admitted they're extremely costly programs. The board was supportive and saying we've got to figure out how to reach these students that are really struggling and are not going to, magically become strong scholars as they move into our high school. Every year as well, we have tracked the kids after they leave Achieve program, and for example, we might have 18 kids that started in the program and finished in 8th grade, and then we track them in 9th grade. We work with them in our STAR, Check and Connect. They're assigned to Check and Connect people, and we really try to help them ease into a 9th grade transition. And that's been difficult. That's been one of the biggest challenges, is frankly, many of those students who went into the 9th grade are no longer with us. They leave the district. So that has been the most difficult piece. Achieve has seemed to work well as far as behavior reduction for the students who were frustrated and misbehaving because they weren't learning, and the small staff to student ratio. So that has worked really well. The parents have been very pleased that have chosen to keep their kid in the Achieve program. As I said, it's an opt-in program, so at any time, obviously natural breaks work better, semester time or whatever. Parents, if they want their student to go back into the academy, that happens sometimes too. The most successful, after studying it for 4 years, frankly, the most successful piece of Achieve has been the 6th grade program. Academically, they have done better. The 7th and 8th grade have not done well academically, keeping in mind that these students, certainly in the academy, would not have been predicted to do well. We look at the data internally every month, and then with Superintendent Kelly and a larger stakeholder group every quarter, as she referenced when we just had our last quarter Achieve meeting. And it has just not made anybody happy that with excellent teachers and small classes that the 7th and 8th grade have not done as well. We attribute the 6th grade's higher level success to a few things. One, they are coming from a program, the 5th graders into 6th, where they are in a self-contained classroom. They're used to that model. Also, the younger you get a student who's a struggling reader, for example, the more success you're going to have getting growth in them. When you start looking at a 1st grade student, and that's why the governor puts so much money in MDE2, the Department of Ed, into that K through 3 for reading. Once you get a 12th grader, it's much harder to see the kind of growth you need to see. So we found with the 7th and 8th graders that was true as well. The parents of the 6th grade program really supported. They were our strongest supporters. We call it a house program, and so they felt like they were not secluded from their friends in 6th grade. They were still able to do lunch and hang out before and after school, but they really liked them in a tight-knit group, learning together, and one teacher basically to communicate with rather than 8 teachers. So Looking forward, working with the District Management Council that Superintendent Kelly's talked about and Superintendent Hayes, we really looked at what is the academic return on achievement. And we found, it's been expensive. And sadly, if the kids did great, I would be coming here and asking you, recommending that we continue with the Achieve program. Because all of us, and I know particularly the school board, wants all of our students to succeed and give all of our students, as Member Landwehr talked about this morning, the opportunity to do well. And it just has not been as successful as we have wanted with the 7th and 8th. So our recommendation is for the school year of 15-16, is to close the Achieve program, but remain with a 6th grade house program part of the academy. We feel to abandon that 6th grade program when it has worked well and parents are so happy with it. And we already have principals of some 5th grade students saying, gee, this would be a great 6th grade program for our 5th grade kids, and have already started conversations with parents of 5th graders going into the 6th grade. We feel it would be really important to keep that program. Now, what do we do for the kids who will be in 8th grade who are 7th grade Achieve this year, and for the kids who are going into 9th grade who are 8th grade Achieve this year? So we have already developed a plan that we presented to the superintendent. We have Check and Connect people. They will automatically be assigned a Check and Connect person. Just to refresh your memory, Check and Connect is a nationally recognized program that has been very effective in dropout prevention. And the Check and Connect professionals get a caseload of approximately 20-25 kids that they check in with daily, and the parents daily, and the teachers daily. So just to put that in a nutshell. So those students would be given priority for Check and Connect. The administration would be working with their STAR teachers to do frequent checks at the 8th grade. As far as the 9th grade, we're talking about doing a little mini camp orientation, maybe a day for those students from 8th grade going into 9th grade that would be just special for them, because they have been in self-contained programming, some of them for 3 years, to get them really comfortable with a bigger building and talk to them kind of like an avid, how do you take notes? How do you ask the teachers questions? Get them very comfortable in their own little group. Also putting them in the same advisory together, so that they could have that comfort zone of, being in an advisory and meeting with one teacher for their advisory, that we would be doing some training as far as, what these students' needs are. And then we're currently visiting several high schools that have 9th grade programs that are very intensive for a select group of kids. Primarily, these programs we found have been around literacy, which obviously, if you're a struggling student, you're probably not a very good reader. So we're really interested in several programs that we have visited and are going to visit that take a small group of their lowest readers, for example, in 9th grade and make a class or a cohort with them. Not a separate school within a school, but kind of a supportive cohort for them. We've already talked to the staff, so that both Achieve and the leadership at the academy, so that they know what we're proposing, and we don't want them to not feel supported and kind of left hanging. We're talking to parents already, starting now, as far as what the future is going to be. And did I miss something? Wanted to be comprehensive, and I know it's getting late, so.
Questions or comments?
Just one question. I know when we started the Achieve program, one of the issues was having the disruptive behaviors of the Achieve students, potentially disruptive behaviors, not affect the mainstream classrooms. Are there plans for that, and how are we going to deal with that?
So a lot of the behaviors we found were coming as a result of, over the years, students struggling and not feeling successful and not feeling like scholars. And so I think the whole mission and vision and strategic plan of moving toward career and college-ready students, just that mindset, that kind of training of all staff, not just teachers, and parents, their expectation of the students, I've already seen a difference in that. Just setting the atmosphere, setting the tone that you are a student that is a scholar, you will go on to some kind of career in college, and really starting that conversation in the elementaries. I really have seen a difference already, and that has reduced some of the behaviors. I have found some students over the years, I've worked for 32 years with kids, if they don't think it matters how they behave or if they learn or not, they won't. And if you really start creating a culture and an environment of that it matters that you learn and it matters that you behave, you see a difference. So that's a piece of it. The other piece of it is that we've talked about at the academy doing individual learning plans for these kids so that you're really sitting down with the parent and the teacher and you're saying, you know, here's their areas they struggle and how can we all support each other. And then just having the same advisory, I think, helps because students, if they click with their advisory teacher, they really look at them as a mentor and someone they can talk to and problem solve with, as well as we have, you know, a social worker and school psychologists for the kids who have greater needs.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. You want the next one?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Next item is turned over to Superintendent Kelly.
This brings us to a very special part of the agenda, and I would just like the people here and the people, you know, viewing tonight to know that School Board Recognition Week is February 16th through the 20th. And since our school board work studies are not televised, we thought that we would celebrate you all tonight for all the fine work that you do. The commemorative week, February 16th through the 20th, is designed to really recognize contributions of Minnesota school board members across the state, including this board and all others who serve in that capacity and who are charged with governance and governing public education under state law. Our deepest appreciation is extended to the people who we have on this board, of course, and we salute the Columbia Heights Board whose commitment and civic responsibility make local control of public schools in our community possible, and for championing local control in your roles to both city, county, and legislative bodies when we have to plead the case. You'll find tonight at your places a little bit of sweetness that's from Dawn and I actually saying thank you, and I think Dawn made, although she didn't make them herself, wave the wand and all the calories are out of them tonight so that you can eat those and enjoy. The other thing that you'll find at your places are our commemorative student cards. And each year we select an artist to be featured. And this particular artist was Jackie Anderson, and she created the Blue and Gold Morning last year. And her idea was to represent an everyday school scene in Columbia Heights Public Schools. And she chose the outside of the building and the entryway to do that because she saw it every morning. She saw people meeting and they had to get through it on their way to inside the building. And so we wanted to pass along some of her greeting cards to you. And I wanted the board and the viewing public to know that these are special. It's the thought that counts because they do meet the minimum on the gift law that we have. So they're nominal but very special. I also am going to call on each of you individually in a minute. And I'm sure Casey will take a picture because that's who Casey is, to recognize your service for this year. So I'm going to go over here for a minute and call on you. The actual certificate that we'll be handing out tonight will be to each one of you individually, but it does say that this is School Board Recognition Week and that the Minnesota School Boards Association and the Columbia Heights Public Schools want to honor you. And they want to honor you for dedicated leadership in public education and continuing service to the children of this community. So I'd like to start First, by recognizing John Larkin, who has served on the board for 2 years. John, would you come up and receive your certificate? And, very good. Yay. Thank you. Good job. And then the next person I would like to recognize is Vice Chair Ted Landwehr, who I think holds the most years of service on the board at this time. Ted has, if we have this right, served 10.5 years on the board thus far, because we're not counting this year. And so we want to thank you. Here is your certificate. Here's your handshake. And here's your hug. There you go. Oh, there we go. Handshake. Certificate up, Ted. Yay. Next, we have one of our new members, Molly Lewis. If you haven't guessed already, we're going alphabetical order. Molly Lewis, who's brand new to us this January, so has a month and a half under her belt. So, Molly, here's your certificate. Member Lori Meyer. It's hard to believe time flies. Lori has been here for 2 years already. And so here's your certificate. Next, one of our newest members, Member Grant Nichols. Once again, with a month and a half under your belt and no cast. So this is good. So first this, then this. And we have to look at him. It's all before we go. Thank you. And last but certainly not least is Member Laura Palmer. Laura has been with us for 4 years. Hello, testing. It still works. Solitary hug. Working, I just want to say from the management team, which is the cabinet, from the administration, which are the principals and directors, and when I look out at people that are not here, but I'm sure would be here if they were not at home with their own families, the staff, and most importantly the students, we'd all like to thank you, because it takes a lot to serve on a board, to give of your own time to serve other people and other people's children, and sometimes at the cost of your very own. Because as much as we can say that you're a board and you're school board members first, you're always a parent as well. And so I know that each of you come to the board for different reasons, but all of them good, and all of them focused on our core values that we like to instill in our students, and I'm very proud to work with each and every one of you. So thank you for your service, and I look forward to an exciting 2015 with you. How about a round of applause for all of our school board members?
Make it louder, we gotta clap.
Well done, everyone.
Well, thank you. I don't buy the no-calorie thing, but I'm going to eat the cookie anyway,
Look
so.
at Dawn. Dawn's shocked.
I'm sorry, Don.
We are going with that.
I'm going with it.
All right. Well, thank you.
I like.
Okay, moving on to action items. Our one item tonight is board policies. It's the second reading. It's going to be for 205 open meeting and closed meetings, 206 public participation in school board meetings, complaints about persons at school board meetings and data privacy considerations, 208 development, adoption and implementation of policies, These policies appeared on the January 27th meeting for first reading, and approval is being sought tonight. Could I have a motion to move that forward, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Laura, second by Ted. Thank you. Any discussion?
Have we received any comments from anybody?
None have come in through the superintendent's office.
Well, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to board topics. Anybody have any board topics? I think the one thing we talked about, Grant, was the polar plunge, and that came up when Donna was here, so we got that out there to talk about tonight, so that's good.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything?
Oh, I have a
Evelyn?
little, I have a little addendum to the polar plunge, because there's a rumor that there'll be one of our board members dressed in a kilt
Yeah.
doing the plunge. Well, they'll remain nameless. You'll have to show up on Saturday to see who that board member is.
Yeah. You'll have to come to see.
That's the suspense part.
I'm looking forward to seeing the chicken, actually. So, that's,
Thanks for that mental picture.
Yeah.
No, I have a
thanks,
couple-
yeah.
I'm with Ted on that one. You talking about the kilt or the chicken?
You're gonna be in the water, right? So,
Yeah, I am.
yeah, so I'm hoping that you know, might save me if I.
You'll have to come and see, I guess.
That's another element of suspense.
I just had one thing I wanted to highlight. I know we talked about WEMAP at the start of the meeting. I want to just emphasize that whatever we do, we're trying to get a soft landing for the students and staff that are in WEMAP. So I think that's everybody's intention. Soft landing meaning that things go on the same, just different ownership or a different title to the schools, but continuing on the existing programs as much as possible. So for any students who might hear this or parents, that's really, I think, everybody's commitment. And also, I have some items from the Minnesota School Board Association conference that I'd love to discuss with the board if they're interested. You know, the SLED study, which is the study that the state's doing on what happens to students once they graduate, and how is that impacting the educational program, impacting their future. If anybody's interested, I'm not looking for a commitment or anything, but just want to throw that out there. I think would be great topics to talk about as a board.
Are they getting the data up for the individual districts? I know when I had gone to a presentation on that several years ago. There were still gaps in the data that they had. There were some states that did the report. Are they gathering all the reports from all the schools now?
They didn't go into that, but I think they're gathering more extensive data than they did even last year.
Yeah, and they think they might even be able to drill down to maybe a specific program and be able to project out where the student is going to land based upon where they were at a certain point. And I know that there was some trying to also do something that was maybe not college bound, but where the students ended up if they didn't go to college. You know, if they went on to opening businesses or stuff. I know that they were still looking. Did they manage to find a way to collect that data?
They're working on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're still working on it. Yeah, that was good. Was a little bit more difficult. So I was hoping they'd solve that
Some
problem.
of the data is actually secure, that only superintendents can access, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know,
For-
I just saw a report published that does list, like, by school district, kids who do go on to college remedial courses, taken, percentage of students that need remedial courses, that's published recently, so I know
Yeah.
that's available.
And 1 year, 2 year, 4 year success rates for being able to stay at college and be successful.
Seems
I just-
interesting.
If I could just interject, because as long as Ted has reported out on it, admin has been looking at that in our work study sessions after school, or as I like to say, after class. And we had them come out and really present where they're at. And they have made tremendous growth. I'm glad you brought it up, Ted, in the last few years with tracking the students. And we're beginning to see our students in the matrix. And at some point, if the board would like, we could do a little recap on the SLEDS data for the board, if you would like that in the spring, once they have it more fleshed out, on what we're seeing with our students and how long, if they're staying in school, and how much remediation they need. One of the insights that they gave us was that since we've started focusing on College Possible and some of our AVID strategies, that the students, more of our students go to college, and they seem to be staying there, which was really wonderful news that we had this fall. So if you would like that, please let me know, and we will schedule that for a work study in the spring.
Thanks. Any other board topics? Going once? All right, we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:08. Thanks for coming.